Hey guys, so this is my follow-up video on Gein that I did for YouTube. It was like an hour-long video, just learning, dissecting, and talking about how I relate to the character of Gein. And it sounds horrible, but it is something that I genuinely feel like I had a lot of thoughts and feelings about, and that video was too long, and as a lot of wise people around me have told, no one wants to listen to you rambling, so I'm trying to keep this video short and sweet. But let's see if that's possible, because I always go off on tangents. But I would like to clarify again that I'm learning about Gein from the Netflix anthology series Monsters, and I've not really read about him. I've not known anything about him, and that's actually how I like to go into shows, movies, and anything that I'm watching, just content in general, because I like the content or whatever I'm watching to tell me the story so I can absorb it as neatly as I can possibly. I go in with a blank mind, with no expectations, no ulterior reviews or intentions, motives, all that background noise that nowadays exists because of social media regarding anything that's coming out. I try to avoid that. I try to specifically if I do not know anything about the content, or if it's based on like a real life person or a story or whatever, I just try to go in completely blind. I usually know who the creator, writer, actors are, and I try to bank on that. I've talked about it more in a lot of other videos, but anyways, my previous video was made based on the first two episodes of Gein, because I'd watched them like a couple nights ago, and then instantly I made a video about it because there was a lot of well, for me personally, a lot of news, a lot of content, a lot of information to deal with, and I had a lot of feelings about it. So if you guys are interested, you could go watch that. But then I continued watching the next couple episodes, so now I am at like 4 episodes into the show, and I am still really engrossed, very excited, very actually looking forward to go watching the next couple episodes. I was excited to learn that Gein was actually the inspiration for Psycho in the first couple episodes, but I honestly did not know that was the case for the Leatherface and Texas Chain Massacre. And I probably should have known all of this, calling myself a movie aficionado, and I like to feel like I know about culture and all that kind of stuff. My girlfriend makes fun of how I literally know every celebrity that exists, but it's funny that I didn't know that. But I think in hindsight, I actually like that the show revealed it to me, and it had that effect and reaction. It got that reaction out of me where I was like, what the fuck, I didn't know that. And also there's like a couple of jump scares regarding the reveal in the show, which actually the show did not need, but I understand why they exist. But for me personally, that was a very good experience. But going back into the story, the themes, and everything that the show is covering, right off the bat in the follow-up 3rd and 4th episode, we learned more into just a little bit about why his mother is the way she is. The father obviously is a drunk and abuses her, and that is the reason why she, like, there's this like horrifying scene, still gives me chills just thinking about it, where she tells Gein that he's the reason why he should know, Gein should know that he should never have a relationship with a woman. He should never lay with a woman. He should never have any kind of connection, any kind of relationship, because that will always lead to having kids, and not only them disappointing you, but your husband disappointing you. And there's this, like, you can see it in her eyes and in her like delivery that she's, how horrified she was of spending her life with this person who she hated, and sleeping with him and having kids with him. And she specifically mentions how she like slept with him only twice, and then that resulted in 2 kids that she had. And instantly it goes back into like the first couple episodes where we learn where she constantly said to him that how he was a disappointment, and how the only person that could accept and love him is a mother, which is her. And even though she's always disappointed in her and never saying anything nice, but also it focuses on how sex and urges and desires and everything was considered such a taboo for him. And I know the show is set up in the 1940s, and a lot has changed, but being a brown Muslim man and coming from like a different side of the world, and again, growing up in Middle East and then some in India for a few years, and having very religious parents, I can relate to that. And while I've mentioned this in the previous video, there are a lot of beautiful things my religion has given me, still gives me to my family, and there's a lot of amazing things I think that have happened to me in my life, and all kudos, or I think most of because like it's a struggle I still have, because we're made to believe that anything nice that happens is because of Allah's blessings, because of God, and everything that is good is because of Him, everything that is bad is because of Satan. So you still have like a bit of like you're like, am I supposed to say like whatever I've achieved is because of me, or is it because honestly it feels like you have very little to do with good or bad either way. And I think that's also one of the themes, like the show, I've talked about it in the previous video, covered in the first few episodes, where you always try to put whatever thoughts and urges and desires that you have are like, oh, that's not you, that's like this other entity that exists right next to you or in your head, who is trying to get you astray and trying to commit sins, and that is how I was brought up. And I think that's like one of the things, one of the coping mechanisms that my parents and a lot of people who follow religion and culture and all that kind of stuff try to do. They try to like imbibe into you, trying to bestow into you like these values and morality on basis of fear, and on basis of the fact that hey, if you do this, this is going to happen, so please don't do it. It's a simple statement, but it has a lot of ripple effects in your life, and that is what the show covers. That is what I related to in the first few episodes. And you could see like the only companionship, the only relation he has is with Adeline, who's this other girl, who is the only one who talks to him, even though he's kind of weird, and he's kind of interested in weird shit like murderers, and don't get fazed by all these kind of weird fascinations. Nowadays talk about true crime shows and documentaries and movies and everything, like even I am talking about it. It's completely normal to do that. You can read about it, watch it, listen to it, but back in the day it was different. So the only companionship he had was with this girl, and then he formed the connection, but he was not allowed to be with her because her mom was like, the moment you are with a woman, you are gonna have sex and you're gonna have kids, and that's how it works. That's how I was brought up. Like for us it was like the only reason you would have sex is to have kids, and when you're married. And it's so much so that even when I was in school, I was so naive, like, forget about being virgin for 20-25 years of your life. That's very normal. And I know it's like something that is, not even comprehensible to people here, but forget about that. I didn't even know how kids were born. I didn't even know how sex worked. I didn't even know anything. I remember this like core memory of mine when I was in school, and I think 9th grade or 10th grade biology, they were teaching us reproductive parts of human, male and female bodies, and like this kids, they were like ripping out papers and talking about it in the bathroom, and I was like, what is all this fuss about a vagina? Because that was the first time a lot of them had seen it, and I didn't even know what it was and what it meant. And I remember my mom was pregnant when I was 11, 12, and I didn't know. She was buying clothes for my siblings, and I still didn't know. I was like, why are you buying this? And she's like, oh, well, we're gonna go get a baby from the hospital or something like that. So that is where I'm coming from, right? So that is where, forget talking about sex and, getting you into understanding what it is, and what you're supposed to expect when you're a teenager and your hormones are running. This is how, our mind was, led to believe that, oh, that is for later on in your life, when you get older, when you get married and you want to have kids. Forget about that. Just go study. And then, eventually you learn, and not in the best way. And that is also like, I related, because like Ed Gein has this moment with, his friend, who now they think there's something romantic between them, and they try to like have sex, and Ed Gein has like his mom in his head, even though she's dead, and he thinks like he cannot have it, even though instantly he goes and he has this urge, and then he ends up having sex with this older woman. To which again the mom in his head is like, oh, you have committed such a huge sin, and she has a venereal disease, which she doesn't, by the way. And again, I don't know how much of this is true or not. I'll do research on Gein myself after I finish watching the show, but that is what we learn. And these are horrifying revelations, by the way. And I kept watching and I was like, oh my god, so many parallels, right, with what we grew up with. And I know like this is an extreme version of it, but that is a very common occurrence for people like me. Again, I'm not going to generalize, but it is something that has happened, and at least something I've experienced. Because for us, the thing is, where I come from, Middle East, Asia, again, not to generalize, but my experience has been like, we believe like everything is just like one word. It's like either religion or it's like love. There is no thing as like infatuation or crushes or desires or horniness or adulation or admiration or whatever. It's all just love. So the first woman you see, first girl you see, and you're like, oh, that is love, you should get married. And the only way you're gonna get with anyone, or any way you will have a connection or touch or whatever it is with a person, is through marriage and through sex. And you end up having this very distorted image and understanding of love, and you fuck up when you first talk to a woman, when you first see women around you. It's just that, and you just have hormones just like raising, and then you stay virgin for so long, and then you end up messing up. Again, I know it feels like I'm talking negatively about this. There are a lot of good things that actually happen too because of that. Because again, like if you look at the flip side here in America, like again, I do not have any experience with this because I wasn't here at that age, but my girlfriend, she's a teacher, she taught middle school and high school, and she tells me all these stories about like how 5-year-olds, 8-year-olds, they already know what sex is, they've had blowjobs, they've had relationships, and then by the time they're 15, 16, 17, they've done so much that they get bored of it, and then suddenly all these different kinds of urges and desires and whatever that are formulating that didn't exist first, or they were, I don't know, quote unquote normal, then just becomes something else. And then by the time you reach like some kind of age or power or money or whatever you have in your life, they just turn into like, again, hyperbole, but like P. Diddy kind of thing, because you're so bored of having sex with men and women and everyone else, that you start like, okay, what else can I do? Can I have it with babies? Can I have it with kids? Can I have it with animals? Can I have it with this? And it just never stops, because you're just like, what else can I get away with now that I have money and power and all these things? So again, hyperbole into extreme examples, but a lot of good sides with American parents and American kids. They have freedom. The parents let you explore, have relationships, understand sex. They have communications, and they talk about it, they understand it, and they let you sometimes they encourage you to go out there and have some kind of freedom. But then it leads to this. But then when you try to do it the other way, where I come from, it leads to that. It's, I don't know what the right way is, I don't know what the wrong way is. I guess you guys can tell me, but I guess that's why parenting is so hard. But anyways, that is one of the themes covered in here. And what the show does beautifully is like 60-70% of the show is like that, and then it's just like merges it like with, like, for example, Barbarian does like a complete shift. I think Weapons is a better example of how it like tonally mixes a couple of things. Then this show takes that and then mixes it with like how it parallelly influenced Ed Gein influenced Psycho, Ed Gein influenced Leatherface, but then it does this parallel with Alfred Hitchcock, who made Psycho, and like he's also peeping, and Ed Gein is peeping, and the beautiful cuts of him to Hitchcock, and then him to Perkins, the actor in Psycho. And like there's this beautiful scene where he's talking to his therapist about feeling like a monster, because he feels sick every time he has sex with a man, and then eventually finally he falls in love with a woman, or at least gets attracted to a woman, and he's like, oh, all this time was a monster, and now I feel like a human because I was doing this. Because everyone around him makes him feel, the therapist specifically makes him feel like he was doing something wrong by having sex with men. And it's like a horrifying revelation. And it's again, I've talked about a lot in my previous video about this, but again, beautiful, in my opinion, beautiful writing in the show. And I know they just touch on these themes and don't really go deep into it. I'll wait for the show to be over to see if they do. But in my opinion, I'm glad they're at least touching on it. And then they do the same thing with Leatherface, and the director who made Texas Chainsaw Massacre, how he talks about all the change in humanity. You know, first it's Hitchcock who's like, okay, humans are horrible, this is what they're doing, with, you know, constant, another theme that the show has with, you know, everything that happened during World War II, everything that the Jews had to, you know, suffer through the hands of, you know, Hitler and everything in war. So there was Psycho, who showed the humanity of like what humans actually want, but then that turned into this weird thing that everyone wanted, just sex and murder and sex and murder, and, you know, it was all just like for fun, and it's just like hunky-dory shit with, you know, just literally nudity and sex on, you know, on the in the cinemas, and that's what it became. And I remember, like, you know, there's this scene where they showed Hitchcock being completely disappointed and sad that that's what eventually became. But then this guy, you know, the director who made Texas Chainsaw Massacre, was like, and then they made a parallel with, you know, what Americans were doing in Vietnam, and he's like, okay, this is now the new humanity and the new reality, and this is what people want. And then he took Leatherface and made Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Again, so many themes, so many topics, and so many different points of views and conversations about how the world is, how, you know, desires, urges, you know, take different shapes and forms, and urges you know, lead to influence, and influence leads to cinema, and cinema leads to more influence. So much conversation about all these things. I'm loving the show. I'll keep watching more and keep hopefully learning more. Let me know what you guys think, and you can share your point of views and your thoughts about all of this, and I will try to finish the show and make more videos about it. But until then, I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.